Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation to contribute to the 7th Annual International Insurance Conference by means of a brief message on behalf of the United Nations Environment Programme. As many of you know, the year 2015 has been a quite remarkable year in terms of international dialogue on issues that in so many respects are central also to the insurance sector and its future. From the Sendai conference that focused on disasters and disaster risk reduction, through the Financing for Development Summit in Addis, followed by the summit in New York that led to the historic adoption of a new 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and perhaps more importantly also the specific nature of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that were adopted by all nations. And finally, with the prospect of the Paris Climate Conference of the Parties still lying ahead of us. Whatever the outlook on the future is, it is quite clear, and this is also one of the reasons why the Secretary General, many UN entities, and in particular also the United Nations Environment Programme, has for many years sought to work with the insurance sector and industry in order to both better understand some of the implications of what we now know we may term as environmental change, as emissions footprints, and the prospect of climate change, not only for the future of the sector, but indeed for our economies. Insurance is, in many respects, an actor that is not only capable of helping us to understand the future in terms of the risks that need to be factored into our economic decision-making today. You are also risk carriers and insurers, and you are investors in the global financial markets. It is in this context that our work together has evolved over many years and found its expression in 2012 at the Rio conference in the launch of the Principles for Sustainable Insurance. This is today the largest UN insurance partnership platform on which we have sought to not only bring the perspectives and also the strength of the insurance sector to inform the public policy arena, but also to allow the public policy arena to envisage a future in which the products, the services and the competencies of the insurance sector help us inform how decisions can be taken. This platform also represents a significant opportunity beyond the immediate prospect of insurance as a sector and its role in the economy. Indeed, the perspectives of trying to address climate change to strengthen our resilience has also, as we saw at the summit in New York and will see hopefully in the lead up to Paris, found an expression in the role that insurance can play, both in terms of early warning, but also in terms of a resilience measure that allows us to absorb the shocks and becomes an integral part of our adaptation strategy to a future that we now know will have to cope with a higher degree of global warming. Let me also point to the fact that, as I alluded earlier on, the insurance sector is not only a player in its products and services that it offers as insurers, but is also a major player in the capital markets. Just a few weeks ago, UNEP launched its inquiry into the design of a sustainable financial system report on the occasion of the annual meetings of the IMF and the World Bank in Lima, Peru. Our study over 2 years that sought to understand how central banks and financial regulatory authorities are likely to be able to incentivize a significant upscaling of investment into the technologies and infrastructure of the 21st century that would allow us to look at a transition towards a low-carbon, a green economy to happen much faster than has been the case in the past. It is here also that the insurance sector, as an investment actor in the world's financial and capital markets, is going to play a critical role. These two universes, if you wish, in your corporate reality need to find a way of convergence, just as public policymakers need to understand that unless we can incentivize the world's financial and capital markets to address the issue of investment in these transition technologies and pathways, we will not succeed. Public finance, which will be again center stage in terms of the Paris COP, will in no country context be sufficient to accelerate this transition on a scale that we now know is necessary. It is thus critical that also in our dialogue with you, we are able to better understand how that financial and capital footprint that you bring to the world's economy can be made more part of the solution, if you wish. This is also a discussion that, as many of you know, is now beginning to find its way into some of the major global economic fora and platforms, whether in the context of the G7 or also in the G20, we are seeing nations looking at the potential implications of climate change in terms of the prudential or also the financial and capital market stability as being issues that are material to the future of our economic and financial system. Hopefully our joint platforms and also through the Principles for Sustainable Insurance will allow us to further amplify both our current understanding and to articulate policy advice and measures that will allow governments but also the broader public to be able to understand where progress is possible or where the constraints still are such that they do not allow us to progress. Let me end my brief presentation by also calling upon you as an insurance sector to consider taking further bold initiatives that allow us to build the bridges between what is often considered to be a market-based economy where the public and financial and also political regulatory functions operate very often in a distinct setting. A sustainable insurance platform may be one way in which we can further intensify this dialogue, as well as looking at a set of insurance sustainable development goals that could further help the industry and the sector to be a proactive player and to facilitate future dialogue between policy making and the commercial and market reality of insurance to allow us to look towards solutions and also with a degree of optimism at a scaling up of these efforts in the years to come. I would also like to recognize the leadership shown by the French Insurance Association, and I know that on the 18th of November you will be releasing a new report that looks at trying to quantify the impacts of climate change on an insurance market and sector with a perspective to the year 2040. I think it echoes extremely well to a number of initiatives that are now underway globally, and that again point to the fact that we need to understand the future very much not only in terms of past trends, but also in terms of quantitative and qualitative shifts in the scenarios that are now before us. Thank you once again for being both open to these issues as part of your own future thinking and for making a partnership with the United Nations and in particular on my behalf with the United Nations Environment Programme an integral part of working together on these issues. Thank you, and I wish you a very successful conference.